I adjusted the final strand of tinsel on the fireplace mantel and stepped back, brushing a strand of chestnut hair from my face. The scent of pine and cinnamon filled the living room, mingling with the faint hum of holiday music drifting from the kitchen. Everything looked perfect, the golden lights twinkling on the tree, the carefully wrapped presents stacked neatly underneath, and the velvet ribbon I had tied around the centerpiece, just so. My phone buzzed, but I ignored it. For once, I wanted to be fully present in this quiet domestic moment, the kind of holiday scene you see in magazines, not the one I'd grown up in. I moved to the window, pulling the sheer curtain aside to catch a glimpse of the snow lightly dusting the lawn. That's when I heard it. A muffled conversation from the backyard, my family's voices, low and conspiratorial, carrying across the cold evening air. I froze, my heart tightening in my chest. Their laughter had always carried a kind of warmth, but this was different. The tone, the choice of words, the way they were speaking about me, made my stomach twist. For a moment, I doubted my own ears, gripping the sill like it was a lifeline. Could it be true? Were they really planning something behind my back, something I had been oblivious to, even while decorating their perfect Christmas? The silk of my blouse felt tight against my chest, and I realized I hadn't just opened a window to the night. I had opened one to the truth. I remember the Christmas 5 years ago like it was yesterday. I was 23, just out of college, full of ideas and determination, but completely underestimated by my family. My parents had invited me home under the guise of celebration, but as soon as I walked in, I felt the familiar tension tightening around my chest. "Emily, you really think you can make it on your own?" my father had said, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. His eyes carried that mix of skepticism and disappointment I knew too well. Maybe it's time to accept reality and stop dreaming so big. My mother didn't look up from arranging the ornaments on the tree. "You're young, Emily. It's sweet that you're ambitious, but..." She stopped herself, glancing at my father as if to confirm my inadequacy. "Maybe you should focus on what's practical." I felt the heat rise in my face, a mix of frustration and hurt. My hands shook slightly as I gripped the edge of the table, trying to ground myself. I wanted to scream, to tell them I had a plan, that I wasn't a naive girl anymore. But I stayed quiet, because I knew words weren't enough to break the weight of their judgment. It was my grandmother who finally noticed, standing in the kitchen doorway with a small, worn box in her hands. "Here," she said softly, handing me a delicate charm bracelet. "Every time life feels impossible, remember that you carry your strength with you. You have a fire they don't yet see." Her eyes held both sorrow and pride. That night, after everyone went to bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, clutching that bracelet. The warmth of the silver links against my skin felt like a promise. I made a decision that night. I would not let their doubts define me. I would leave, find my own way, and build the life they refused to believe I could. By the next morning, while the house still smelled of pine and sugar cookies, I had packed a small suitcase, leaving behind the familiar suffocating rhythm of their expectations. I walked out into the crisp winter air, the bracelet on my wrist catching the light of the rising sun, a small emblem of hope and rebellion. It was the first step toward independence, toward becoming a woman who would no longer wait for permission to exist fully. Leaving home that winter morning was both terrifying and exhilarating. I moved to Chicago with nothing but a small suitcase, my grandmother's bracelet, and a head full of stubborn determination. The city was overwhelming, the streets buzzing with cars, people, and possibilities I wasn't sure I could reach, but I reminded myself that every towering building represented an opportunity, not an obstacle. I found a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper and a view of a brick alley, the rent barely affordable on the meager job I landed at a local boutique marketing firm. My hands ached from long days of data entry and late nights of research, but every small victory, a client praising a campaign, a spreadsheet perfectly balanced, fueled the fire in me. I learned to survive, but I also learned to thrive quietly. It was during one of those endless nights at the office that I met Caroline Reynolds, a seasoned marketing strategist known for taking bold risks. She noticed the way I stayed late, the way I double-checked every detail, and the way I suggested new ideas with a cautious but unwavering confidence. "Emily," she said one evening as we cleaned up the conference room, "you've got a mind that can run circles around most of the senior team. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Caroline became my mentor, guiding me through client negotiations, branding strategies, and the subtle art of making power moves without seeming desperate. The learning curve was brutal. I faced rejection, my ideas dismissed, and the constant whisper of self-doubt that said, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here." But I refused to surrender. Slowly, the wins came. My first independent client, a small but influential boutique, brought in enough revenue to validate my risk-taking. The first marketing campaign I led solo went live with resounding success. Each paycheck, each acknowledgement, each quiet nod of approval became a brick in the foundation of my hidden empire. I kept it all secret from my family. Social media showed modest updates, coffee runs, occasional selfies, neutral captions. I couldn't risk them knowing too soon. Their judgment would only cloud my progress. I was creating my life on my terms, not theirs. By my third year, I had co-founded my own boutique agency with Caroline, a place that reflected both our visions. The office smelled of fresh paint and ambition, walls adorned with art I had carefully chosen to inspire creativity and strength. I had learned the intricate balance of independence and collaboration, power and empathy, and most importantly, the value of silence. My success was mine, not theirs to question or diminish. Even as I decorated my apartment that December, stringing golden lights around the windows and hanging delicate ornaments on the tree, I felt a quiet pride. The bracelet on my wrist had become more than a symbol. It was a reminder that fire, once ignited, can never be extinguished by doubt or disbelief. I was ready for whatever came next, though I had no idea that night would bring the most shocking revelation of all. The doorbell rang, sharp against the soft hum of holiday music. My heart skipped a beat. I had been expecting them, yet the anticipation still felt electric. My family, blissfully unaware of the life I had built, stepped into my apartment, carrying trays of cookies and platters of food as if they were entering the home of the same struggling girl they had last seen years ago. "Emily, this place is cozy," my mother said, glancing around with a polite smile, completely missing the subtle elegance in the room. The marble-topped table gleamed under the warm glow of the chandelier I had insisted on installing, and the golden fairy lights cast a soft shimmer over the carefully arranged ornaments. My father's eyes scanned the room, nodding faintly, though I could see the underlying skepticism in his furrowed brow. I led them to the living room, where the tree towered, perfectly adorned with decorations I had collected on solo trips, each with its own story of struggle and triumph. I let them take it in, letting the silence stretch just long enough for curiosity to flicker in their expressions. "Emily, you've really done a lot here," my father said, attempting casual awe, but I could hear the tremor of disbelief in his voice. My mother's hand hovered over the edge of the couch, unsure whether to reach for my arm or retreat. I smiled, the kind of calm, controlled smile that came from years of proving myself in every arena of life. "Thank you," I said softly, then let the words hang in the air before continuing. "There's something I think you should know." I gestured toward the office space adjoining the living room, a place I rarely let anyone see. The glass door revealed sleek, modern furnishings, an organized wall of awards, and a digital screen showing recent campaigns my agency had launched successfully. "This," I said, "is my company. I co-founded it 3 years ago. We have clients nationwide. Our revenues doubled last year, and I am the sole owner of all intellectual property and branding rights. Everything you thought I was struggling to do, I've done and then some." The room went quiet. My father's mouth opened slightly, then closed, a stammering denial on his lips. My mother's eyes glistened, a mixture of shame and astonishment clouding her features. Even my younger brother, always quick with teasing remarks, simply stood frozen, trying to process that the sister he had mocked was now the one defining success. I let them absorb the truth. Their silence was heavy with the weight of recognition, guilt, and incredulity. Finally, I spoke again, softer this time, but every word precise and deliberate. I didn't show you this life because I wanted you to see it on my terms, not yours. I worked, I fought, I failed, and I succeeded. All without your approval. This is the life I built for me. The bracelet on my wrist caught the light as I held up my hand, a silent echo of the promise my grandmother had made years ago. They understood, not just the success, but the journey, the independence, and the fire that could not be extinguished by doubt or disbelief. In that moment, I realized that the Christmas decorations, the warm lights, even their shocked faces, were secondary. The real gift that year was the acknowledgement of who I had become, and that acknowledgement came not from their praise, but from my own unwavering conviction. After the initial shock had settled into stunned silence, I could feel the balance of power subtly, unmistakably shift. For the first time in years, I held the authority in this room, not out of spite, but because I had earned it. I looked at each of them in turn, letting the truth settle in their minds as I spoke with calm precision. Here's the thing, I began, my voice soft but firm. I am happy to have you in my life again. But things have to change. If you want to be part of my world, part of this family, it can't be on the same terms as before. My father's lips pressed into a thin line. I knew he wanted to argue, to assert his authority as he always had, but I held up my hand. You'll need to let go of judgment and the assumption that success only looks like what you recognize. I built this life with integrity and hard work, and I won't accept dismissive comments or old patterns of criticism. My mother's eyes glistened. Emily, she started, but I gently interrupted. You will support, not sabotage. You will celebrate, not diminish. And both of you will try to understand, rather than dictate, the lives I lead. Turning to my brother, I smiled, though the firmness in my tone remained. As for you, I want to see effort in your career, in your goals. Stop comparing yourself to others or assuming your sister's success is your failure. You have potential, but you need focus, discipline, and respect. I paused, letting each condition sink in. I wasn't punishing them. I was creating boundaries that allowed growth. They could choose to accept, or they could step back. This wasn't revenge. It was a framework for healthier, honest relationships. I had spent too long accommodating old patterns, and this was my chance to redefine the dynamics. There was a brief moment of hesitation, the kind that stretches seconds into a lifetime. And then, slowly, small nods began. My father rubbed his forehead and muttered, I understand. My mother's hand found mine, squeezing lightly, as if acknowledging a new respect. My brother's jaw set, a quiet determination sparking in his eyes. I exhaled softly, letting warmth creep into the edges of my stern resolve. I am not shutting you out, I said, but if you want to be part of my life, this is what it looks like. You will rise to meet these conditions, or you will watch from the sidelines. I could see it, the dawning realization that I was no longer the girl who needed permission or approval. I was the architect of my own life, and these were the terms that allowed love and respect to coexist with power and independence. As the family gathered around the tree, the twinkling lights reflecting in their eyes, I felt an unusual serenity settle over me. For the first time, I could celebrate not just the holiday, but the truth of who I had become, a woman who demanded respect, set boundaries, and welcomed change, all while maintaining the warmth and compassion that defined her. The days following that Christmas were quieter, but in a different way, the kind of quiet that signals transformation rather than tension. My parents began to show subtle changes, small but meaningful. My father, who had once dismissed my ambitions, started asking questions about my campaigns, genuinely curious. My mother, previously so hesitant, volunteered to help with a charity drive my agency was organizing, and even my brother began exploring courses he had postponed, inspired by the example of hard work and dedication he could no longer ignore. I watched them navigate these changes with a sense of cautious optimism. I didn't expect perfection. That would have been unreasonable. But I did expect effort, honesty, and growth. And already, I could see the beginnings of all three. One evening, as snow fell softly outside my apartment window, I held my grandmother's charm bracelet in my hand, tracing the delicate links. It had carried me through years of doubt, solitude, and struggle. Each scratch and shine marked a memory of resilience, of a girl who refused to be silenced, who refused to be diminished. It was more than jewelry. It was a testament to the fire that had guided me here. I allowed myself a quiet smile, the kind that only comes from knowing you fought for your own life and won. The family, now present not as critics but as tentative allies, gathered around the fireplace, sipping cocoa and sharing stories. Laughter echoed, softer and warmer than ever before, the kind that no longer carried the weight of judgment. I realized then that my journey had never been about proving them wrong, though that had been a welcome side effect, but about proving to myself that I could survive, grow, and flourish on my own terms. The woman who had once opened a window and heard whispers of doubt had become someone who could close doors on negativity and still let love and light in. As I placed the last ornament on the tree, I whispered to myself, more than anyone else, I am enough. I always was and I always will be. And in that moment, surrounded by the soft glow of Christmas lights, I felt the quiet, unwavering power of a life fully claimed, a life built from courage, resilience, and the unapologetic pursuit of who I was meant to be.